It's great. Yeah, great video. We are in our fifth week of 40 Days of Community, and this week we're looking at serving one another, serving the church, and serving our community as well. So we're going to be looking into Romans today, but before we do that, we just want to do three things. We want to invite you to stand and greet one another. We also want to invite the youth and the children to be dismissed. If you are a guest this morning, or if you're a parent of one of our the smaller kids, you are more than welcome to follow your kid out the door with Pastor Lorette and her team. But they're going to go upstairs, and then the youth are going to go into the youth room, and then the rest of the adults, if you can greet one another in the name of Jesus, that would be great. So let's do that together, okay? Before we get into Romans. One of the things I want to ask everybody to do, this is part of the message. One of the things I want to ask everybody to do, if you would, and this really goes again with the message today, I'm going to ask that we all sit together. I'm going to do something that I just want to ask if you would be willing to move forward. Can we pack out the first 7 to 10 pews of the church? I know it's a big request, but could we come forward? Pack out the first 7 or 10 pews. We're going to be a family today. We're going to be a family. I'm going to take your stand, John. You tell him, Bonnie. Tell him to come forward. I'm going to sit down here, and we're going to be a family today. Because the truth is, families can get messy, right? Families can get messy, and we're looking at serving today and what it takes to serve other people. What it takes to serve other people. How many of you know it'd be a lot easier if we just did everything ourselves, right? Isn't that true? Isn't that the case? When you're trying to get something done, when you're trying to get a job done, or when you're trying to serve in a ministry, sometimes it would just be easier to just do it myself, and you do it yourself. But that's not how God designed the church, and that's not how God designed you. And so we want to look, week number 5 of 40 Days of Community, of what it takes to serve with other people. And I want to invite you to turn to Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. We're going to read 4 through 8. Romans is about 2/3 of the way back in the Bible. Maybe a little bit more. Romans chapter 12. 4 through 8. What it takes to serve with other people. This is really good material for you to write down. We should have notes for you that you can fill in. If not, you can just listen, whatever you want to do. Romans chapter 12, verse number 4 through, let's start at verse number 3. How about that? For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you. Just as each of us has one body with many members, in other words, feet and arms and legs, these members do not have all the same functions. So in Christ, we who are many form how many bodies? One body. And each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man's gift is prophesying, let him use it in proportion to his faith. If it is serving, then let him serve. If it is teaching, let him teach. If it is encouraging, let him encourage. If it is contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it is leadership, let him govern diligently. And if it is showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. All right, summary here. You're given a gift, at least one different gift, and all of us have different gifts, and all of us not only have different gifts, but we're called to use those gifts to serve the body and to serve other people. If I were to say that, let's say I have the gift of teaching, and all I do is teach, and I don't teach to you, and I don't teach to anybody else, I just talk to the wall or talk in my office, and I just teach. What good would that do, right? That wouldn't do any good. So what am I called to do? I'm called to serve and to teach the body of Christ, and you're called to teach, and you're called to govern, and you're called to minister, but you're not called to do it on your own. You're called to do it with one another, because the Bible says that you're each called to one another, and we are many members, but we belong to each other. And so that's a key verse here, and this is our text here for today. Many of you know, and I've shared this before, but I haven't shared a lot of detail. In transition in ministry, I used to work at In-N-Out Burger. And I was around 29 years old when I worked at In-N-Out Burger. I was one of the oldest guys there. A lot of other younger people were working there, and I worked at In-N-Out. Anybody, by a show of hands, have ever had an In-N-Out Burger? Anybody in here? 100% of the people had an In-N-Out Burger. Let me tell you something about In-N-Out. There's a little bit of a secret about In-N-Out. In-N-Out has got it right. And do you know, you can step any employee of In-N-Out, no matter what location they're serving at, they can step into any other restaurant at In-N-Out all over the country or the West Coast and in Texas, and everything is exactly the same. How they cook burgers, how the chain of command goes, how you prepare the burger, how you cook fries, how you communicate. Everything is exactly the same no matter what location you go to at In-N-Out. So it's not like you have to find how they do it at this location, and then if you move up north, you got to find how they do it at that location. It's all the same. So employees transfer all over the place, and they can step right in and serve it In-N-Out. The other thing too, if you ever wonder how they can serve so many good hamburgers and fries at the volume in which they serve. We used to aim for 50 cars going through the drive-thru in a half hour with top-notch service. We want 50 cars to go through the drive-thru every half hour. That's a lot of burgers. If you figure families, even families that ask for 6, 7, 8 burgers, 50 cars every half hour. Now, how did we do this? How did they do this? How do they do that today? I'm going to share a secret. They communicate with one another, number one. When you take your order at In-N-Out, if you're outside and you're in your car, they will punch in your order. But you see this headset that's on this person. They'll say 8 meat down or 12 meat down. They're communicating with the cook that's in the front grill. And that cook hears 10 meat down, and they begin to throw meat, hamburgers, on the grill because they know that you just ordered 12 patties. Or if they'll say 3 fries down or 7 fries down, or for some people, 12 fries down. I was doing fries. A lot of my job responsibility was to cut the potatoes in the back room and then bring them up and cook fries. And we would produce huge amounts of fries. My biggest order was 72 fries to go. 72 fries. Now, if we're trying to do 50 cars in every half hour and we get an order for 72 fries, how in the world are we going to do that? Here's how. People step up to help. People step up to help. They come over and they load the baskets with fries and they help serve. And the cook on the grill behind me, they would say 3 to go, 5 to go, 12 to go. So I already know my packaging and everything that I have to do, package the fries in certain bags. I already know that when those burgers come off the grill, I better have hot fries ready to go out the window into your mouths and as you go through. And so the thing with In-N-Out, and I'm going to get into how this affects ministry and how you serve with other people in your jobs, is the thing with In-N-Out is they communicate. Lots of people have headsets, lots of communication, and everybody steps up, including the head manager. You'll sometimes see him taking out trash or cooking fries or helping serve food. He doesn't sit there in his high and mighty box and do nothing and tell all the other peons what to do. They step up and they serve no matter what position anybody holds. You step up and serve because it's all about the customer. And it's all about fresh food. And can't you tell at In-N-Out, don't you think? You can tell that it's top quality food. I think about your jobs, and if you think about your job, you might say, wow, in reality, or at least in the ideal world, that would be nice, but in my job, it's all about turf wars. In my job or in my ministry, maybe here at the church, it's all about who's in charge of what, and you better stay inside your turf and not go into any other circle. And I know in some jobs you can't afford to go into other people's department because you would mess things up. But if we look at the church and how the church is called to operate, nowhere do you see like a hired gun to do all the work. Nowhere do you see that the church in the Bible hires this person and they come in and they do all the work. And in this case, in the modern world, it would be the pastor. The whole idea that we're going to hire a pastor to do all this work, or we're going to hire a youth pastor to do all this work, or we're going to hire... You don't see a lot of hired gun mentality in the scriptures. You do see a lot of equipping and a lot of group work. In fact, Jesus and Paul, both of those men, did ministry in groups of people. They traveled everywhere with different people. They never traveled on their own without at least one other person with them. And in ministry, though, it's the same way, especially in today. So how do we serve, though, together with that way? When we serve together with other people, it gets messy, right? It gets messy because we have people with different personalities. We have people that have different ideas about how the church should run. If I were to take a poll with all of us in here about what my job responsibility should be as a pastor, we would probably have at least 10 different answers. Some people would say, well, you're called to visit, you're called to do this, you're called to preach, you're called to teach, you're called... But if you look in Ephesians, my job, the job description of a senior pastor or a pastor, it's to equip the saints with works of service. I am called to equip you to serve in groups of other people, and I am also called to serve as well, but to serve the church. And so it can get kind of messy in ministry. It can get kind of messy in your job. So how do you serve with other people? What does the Bible have to say with how you should serve with other people? And we're going to use this morning an acrostic with the word team, the letters team, T-E-A-M. How do you serve in a team? How do you serve with somebody else that doesn't look like you, think like you, has a personality like you, or holds the same values that you do? It's kind of tricky, especially if you do it all in the name of Jesus. It can be kind of tricky. Number one, the first thing that you need to understand in order to serve with somebody else and to effectively serve on a team, there has to be trust. You have to have, T stands for trust. You have to have trust with the person that you're serving with, and you have to be trustworthy. Paul tells Timothy here in your notes in chapter 6, he says, Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to your care. You might want to circle or underline that word, entrusted. Now, Timothy was a guy who traveled with Paul. When Paul went on different assignments, he would take Timothy, and they went together. And so Paul tells Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to your care. Obviously, it's football season, and there's different positions in football. The quarterback, though, is not called to hog the ball. Did you know the quarterback, his main responsibility, just like a point guard in basketball, it's to distribute the ball. A quarterback is called, his main objective is to throw the ball to somebody else or hand the ball to somebody else. Rarely do you see in the NFL, except for maybe Colin Kaepernick with the Niners, and they're not doing too well because of it. Rarely do you see a quarterback, all he does is keep the ball. He's called to distribute the ball. And so as a point guard in a basketball, he's called to distribute the ball. And in the same way in ministry, we're called to distribute and to delegate and to equip and to let other people do some things that are gifted in other areas that you're not gifted in. So a question that I'd ask all of us that serve on teams is, are you holding the ball all the time? Are you able to delegate, and are you distributing the ball to other people? If those of you that are in small groups, chances are really high in a small group that you have uncovered talents or undiscovered talents. How many of you last week, or even the last couple of weeks on Wednesday nights, when you're listening to people share, you learned something new about somebody else in your group? Anybody learn something new about somebody else? Sure, yeah. I found out last week in our small group that one of the gentlemen used a certain method to learn computers. And the reason why he's learning computers is so that he can go to college online. But he didn't really know how to use a computer to the full extent. And I didn't know that. I assumed that he knew how to use a computer, but he doesn't, and he's learning. And that's something new. Chances are in our small groups, we have uncovered talents, we have undiscovered gifts, we have people that have been able to do something for many years and we just don't know. But we would never know if we don't distribute, if we don't find out, if we don't discover that other people have gifts. And it takes trust, though. It takes trust to let them share. It takes trust to let them take over. It takes trust to let them do ministry. You've got to be able to trust people if you're going to function as a team. Now, what does it take to trust? Here we go in your notes. Here's something that it takes to trust. If you're not trustworthy, or if you have a hard time trusting other people, listen to this. Here we go. Number one, be consistent. Be consistent. Luke 16, verse 10 says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. How many of you know this to be true? If you say that you're going to do something, do it, right? Keep your word. If you say that you're going to do something, do it. That will gain people's trust. If you say that you're going to be there, be there, right? If you say you're going to do it, do it. If you say you're going to be there, and that earns people's trust. But be consistent. If you're all over the place with either your emotions, or if, every time you walk around, everybody's walking on eggshells around you because they don't know if you're going to laugh, if you're going to cry, if you're going to yell at them, if you're going to be happy, if you're going to say praise the Lord, or if you're going to say, what are you doing here? I mean, if everybody's afraid to be around you because they got to walk on eggshells, then this is an area where you need to grow in, is to learn to be consistent a little bit in your emotions and how you come across. Ask God to give you some consistency as well. Somebody, and I want to give a shout out here, because we're a family today. That's why I had you all sit here. And this person's actually sitting in this group. There's a couple of people actually that are sitting in this group that are seriously trustworthy. When they say they're going to do something, they absolutely do it. I'm going to embarrass him and he's going to shake his head, but Bob Hoagland over here, I knew it, you shook your head. When Bob Hoagland over here says he's going to do something and he's going to be somewhere, he's there and he does it. He is. This man is trust. Now, all of you don't go up and ask him, favors. But when he says he's going to do something, he does it. You know what else? There's somebody else in here. Do you know who Judy Richardson is? Is Judy? Where's Judy at? Judy, when she says she's going to do something or she's going to be somewhere, she does it. Joanna Guthrie is the same way. She says she's going to do something or she'll get it done. It's usually done early and very well. And I can go through a lot of our names. I'm looking at all of our faces. There's a lot of people here that are very trustworthy. When they say they're going to do something, they're going to do something. There's people that aren't that way. And I have a list here of them. Their names are... Just joking. Just joking. But one of the things that you can do to gain people's trust and to earn people's trust is to be consistent. Be consistent. Don't be all over the map with your emotions, or if you come into your small group, or if you come into the church here and people ask you how you're doing, don't lie, but be consistent, Let them know that you're okay, or if you're not okay, have prayer. But if everybody's got to walk around eggshells around you, chances are it's going to be a little harder to work with you. So be consistent. Another way to build trust here is to be confidential. Be confidential. Proverbs 11:13 says, a gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy man keeps a secret. Sometimes, and I think we're all guilty of this, okay? So let's not point fingers at all and say that none of us gossip. Most of us have been caught in this trap before because it's the church and this is what we do. But it's not confidential if you say, I will hold this in confidence, but just let me share just a couple of things with somebody else. Or let me just share part of this. Or have you ever heard somebody come up to you and say, now this is confidential, what I'm going to share with you, so don't say it. It's not confidential if they say that. Confidential means it stays with you, right? It stays with you. As a pastor, there's no way, or pastors, and Pastor Janet knows this, Pastor Lorette knows this, anybody who serves in leadership, if our people come to us in confidence and explains to us and shares with us what's going on, the sin that they have, the struggles that they face, or what they did, and then we go off and share it with other people in confidence, that destroys trust, doesn't it? That will destroy trust. It's the same way with you as well. If somebody shares something with you, and they say, hey, keep this confidential, then that does not mean share it with Jeff, share it with so-and-so, share it, anything like that. You got to keep it confidential, which means nobody else. A third way here to build up trust is to be close. is to be close. Friends love through all kinds of weather, and families stick together in all kinds of trouble. Bring your friends in a little closer during the 40 days of community. Be close to your friends. Come and let them know what you're struggling with. Sometimes I will ask, and you've heard me ask this, I'll say, how you doing? And most people will say, oh, I'm doing good. And then I'll say, are you lying to me? And in fact, this even happened last week. They said, yeah, I'm lying to you. I'm not doing good at all. And then I'll ask, well, tell me about your life. What's going on? How can we pray for you? What can we help you with? And then they begin to open up. And that happens when you make a choice to be close to somebody else. Also, just with the whole idea of building trust with somebody. How many of you know that trust takes time, doesn't it? It takes a lot of time to build somebody's trust. It takes a lot of time to build trust with other people. But let me ask you this question. Isn't it, doesn't it just take a snap of a finger to lose trust? Right? One decision, you can lose trust. One wrong word that comes out of your mouth, you can lose trust. But it takes a lot of time to build it up. And so trust takes time. And the ways to do that, be consistent, be confidential, and then also be close. Let somebody else in. Let your guard down. Let your guard down a little bit, especially those of us in 40 Days of Community on Wednesday nights and those small groups. Let your guard down a little bit. Even if you're not in that, let one of your friends get a little bit closer. Let them know what you're dealing with. Share with them your struggles. Let somebody else be close to you. Ask them. Instead of just taking the blanket answer that they're doing fine, why don't you say, are you really doing okay? Don't intrude and don't say, no, you're not doing fine, tell me. But bring them in close. We all need to be a little bit closer, and that builds trust. And that trust component is huge to serve with other people on a team. Okay, number 2, and this stands for E, is empathy. You want to serve together with somebody else, you've got to learn to empathize with people and have empathy. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, it says, live in harmony with one another, be sympathetic. There are 2 human needs under this point here, empathy, that I think we can pretty much all agree on. Most people want to be understood. Most people want to be understood. Most offenses that happen in church world, and maybe even in your own business world or your work world, most offenses that happen are because somebody is not being understood, or they feel like their opinion doesn't matter, or their values don't matter, or their ministry, or their lives, or their time matters. So they don't feel like they're being understood. So seek to understand other people. Seek to understand other people. And then the other need that people feel is they need to know that, or at least they need to feel like their feelings matter. If we discard what people think, if you discard what your small group members think, or you throw out the window how somebody feels, or if you're not being empathetic, or you're just being cold and harsh and, well, they just need to get over it. Sometimes I'm not the best counselor. Sometimes at times I see things black and white. And if I'm not empathetic and say, wow, I don't understand what it's like to be in your position, but I'm going to listen anyway. If I don't put on that, that approach to counseling, I'm a terrible counselor. Because I'll be black and white equals, you got to do this. We're done. And people are like, no, that's my life you're talking about, So we've got to learn to be empathetic, and people seek to be understood, and they also need to know that their feelings matter. So when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, this is what's going on, or I struggle in this area of my job, the more empathetic you can be and the more that you can seek to understand them, the more they will trust you, and the more that they will feel like they're part of the team. And so how do we be more empathetic? Here's a couple of ways as well. I think I put listen on the notes here, but write this down as well. Slow down and listen. Slow down and listen. James chapter 1, verse 19 says, be quick to listen and what? Slow to speak. We had one of the best board meetings we've had this last Thursday, and we had a lot of things that we had to cover. But one of the things that was said before was, let's seek to hear instead of seek to be heard. Does that make sense? Let's seek to hear one another instead of seek to be heard. So we need to slow down and listen. And the board members did this, and we were listening to each other. And I mean, it was a fantastic board meeting. It was a great board meeting. We had a lot to cover. So slow down and listen. Speed destroys empathy. You might want to write that in. Speed destroys empathy. If you got to get to point A to point B, or to point A to point D, and you don't have time for B and C, that'll destroy empathy. There's one man, a businessman, John Maxwell tells a story where there's a boss and he goes into the work and he walks in the door and he goes straight to his office and he misses like 30 to 40 people and he just goes straight to his office and John pulls him aside and says, "Hey, George, what are you doing?" "I got work to do. I got a lot of work to do." And John tells George, he says, "You just passed all of your work. It's the 40 people that you just passed." And so slowing down and speed destroys empathy. If you've ever been up to Santa Barbara or if you've ever wanted to look at the beach on the coast in California, there's different ways that you can look at the details on the beach in California. If you do it really fast, it'll destroy it. In other words, if you take a plane from San Diego to Santa Barbara, you might see some of the things on the beach, but you won't see a lot of stuff. You won't see probably seals. You won't see any of the seashells. You won't see some of the people. You won't see some of the things that comes out on the beach if you take a plane. If you take the Amtrak to San Diego to Santa Barbara along the coast, you're not driving, but you have a chance to look. But that Amtrak's going pretty fast. You've been on the Amtrak before? It moves. And you go through the coast, and you might see some of the stuff that you wouldn't see from a plane, but you're still not going to see everything on the beach. If you were to take a car, you're still not going to see everything. If you were to take a bicycle and ride your bike from San Diego to Santa Barbara along the beach, you might see more than what you would see on the Amtrak because you're not going as fast. But if you really want to see the details on the beach, from San Diego to Santa Barbara, what's the best way? It's to stop and go on the beach and walk around and sit down and just be still and patient and watch. That is the best way to see the details on the beach. In the same way, if you want to empathize with somebody, or if somebody says, "Man, you're really cold today," or "You're really hard," the best way to do this and to empathize is to slow down and listen. Slow down and listen to people speak and share. Number two, another way to build up your empathy is to ask questions. In Proverbs 20, verse 5, the Good News Bible says, "A person's thoughts are like water in a deep well, but someone with insight can draw them out." Ask questions. How are you doing? How can I help? That's a great question to ask. How can I help you? Usually if you ask somebody, "Hey, how can I help you today?" they'd be blown away. They'd be like, "Oh, what? I don't even know what to do with that question. How can you help me? I don't know." Most people don't carry around a list of things that other people can help them with, right? Because we're not used to that question. But that's a great question. How can I help you this week? How can I better help you in this ministry? How can I help you with this service project? How can I help you in your ministry or what you're doing? So ask questions. That's a great way to build empathy. Number three here is to show emotion. It's funny, Romans chapter 12, if you just go a few verses further, you see it says, Paul says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice," and what? "Weep with those who weep." Show emotion. Show emotions, and that will build empathy with your team. My grandmother died of lung cancer. She smoked all of her life. And she died of lung cancer, and I saw her on her deathbed, the last couple of breaths, and she was dying, and I can't imagine. I remember somebody, my coach actually, Coach Rayner. I'll never forget this. Coach Rayner, I went back to football practice, and he stopped me in the hallway, and he said, "Hey, Jeff, how are you doing with your grandmother's passing?" I said, "I'm doing fine. I got to go throw the ball, all that." He's like, "You need to take the time that you need with your grandmother's passing." And I'll never forget that. It was like a 30-second conversation, but I'll never forget this coach of this huge program stop me and say, "You need to take some time to grieve your grandmother's death, so take the time that you need." I'll never forget that, 30 seconds. And so he showed emotion with me. I can't imagine if somebody were to say, "What happened to your grandma?" "Well, she died of lung cancer." "Well, she should have not smoked then." What if somebody said that? Or what if somebody said, well, I wasn't going to say that, but what if somebody said something really bad and really insensitive, But if you stop and slow down and show emotion and say, I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything that I can do for you? Or we're praying for you. Just slowing down, showing emotion. Grieve with those that grieve. Weep with those that weep. Rejoice with those that rejoice. Somebody else got promoted and you didn't. Don't sit there and be a sour face. You shouldn't have got promoted. Rejoice with them. Good for you. Congratulations. It should have been me, but that's okay. Good for you. Just joking. You don't have to say that. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. What that does, though, friends, here's the point. What that does is it builds empathy with that person. And if people know that you actually care, and you actually care what they're dealing with, the teamwork, and when you're serving alongside of them, you find that, man, you can just conquer any mountain with them because they know that you care. And they know that they can trust you. So trust is a big one, and empathy is a big one. Okay, here's letter A for being a team. You got to be able to make accommodation. Accommodation, that's the letter A, accommodation. 2 Timothy 2, verse 22 says, be faithful, loving, and easy to get along with. What does accommodation mean? Accommodation means make room for other people. Okay, make room for other people. When you go to a hotel, it's often called accommodation. The hotel staff there, they're making a room for you. Is everything okay with your room? Do you need anything? Pillowcases, more pillows, new sheets, new towels? Seems like every time I go to a hotel, they don't have enough towels, right? We need more towels, so they bring more towels. They're trying to do their best to accommodate your needs. In the same way in ministry, if you think about ministry, we want to accommodate other people. We want to accommodate other people. In fact, there's even a verse that says, not only look out for your interests, look out for the interests of others. The worship team that comes in here very early in the morning on Sundays, sometimes 8 o'clock, even earlier sometimes, they don't park in the closest spots. They don't park right up here next to the doors. They park all the way along the fence, all the way in the back. Our office manager does the same thing. She parks all the way down because we're trying to accommodate other people for you and for guests and new people that are coming to the church to park in those closest spots. And that's called accommodation. So we need to accommodate other people. How about places to sit in the sanctuary? I was so proud of our church. A couple of years ago, we had an Easter service that was just packed. Do you remember that? And we had some of our leaders, they had to stand up and accommodate other people to sit down. So they got up and stood in the back while some of our guests came in and sat in the pews. That's called accommodation, and that was well done. I was a very proud pastor on that day, for sure, of our people. So, all right, if you struggle with accommodation, if you struggle with this, here's how you can build accommodation. We need to accommodate each other's needs. How can I help you? Don't look out, here it is, Philippians 2:4. Don't look out only for your interest, but take an interest in others too. Jesus says, give to those who ask and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. Now that's a really tough teaching right there. Give to those who ask. He just says those. Jesus just says those. He doesn't say people ages 25 to 45 or people from 65 to 90. Give to those people. And don't turn away from those people who have jobs, who have careers, who have cars. But if they want something, then let them borrow. He didn't say any of that. He simply says, give to those who ask, and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. That's a hard teaching. It's a hard teaching. That's one of the teachings I'm going to ask Jesus about. It's probably not going to matter when I get to heaven, but I'm going to ask him about that. So care for and accommodate other people's needs. If you were to look into the life of the person sitting right next to you, do you know that they have a lot of needs? They have needs. Some people need to feel valued. Some people need to hear good job. Some people need to hear you look nice today. Do you know how many people go through and go to church or they go into the world and nobody ever tells them, you look nice today? They need to hear that. Some people need to feel loved. Some people need to feel comforted. Some people need to have different needs. Some people need repairs on their house. Some people need gas in their car. Some people need food in their fridge. If we were to really, really become a family and get to know each other, we would see that everybody has certain needs. But we'll never know if we don't, what? Ask. We'll never know. So I just want to encourage Claremont, all of us as a family, to get beyond the surface questions on Sunday and get beyond the surface level conversations and get down. And it's a two-way street. One is press in a little bit, ask more questions. And if you're being asked the question, open up a little bit. Don't shut down right away. Don't put your arm out and say, you know what, don't talk to me. I don't want to hear this. We need to open up more on both sides of that fence. So to accommodate each other's needs. Here's another one. Accommodate each other's ideas. Proverbs 18, verse 15, the intelligent man is always open to new ideas. In fact, he looks for them. Do you think the guy who founded Facebook, Mark, right? Do you think he's a closed-off minded individual where he's like, it's got to be my way or no way? Absolutely not. How about the person over Google, the CEO of Google right now, or all those leaders in Google? Do you know how much they welcome new ideas? They pay people to bring up new ideas. How about the leader of any of these big companies, Sony, Apple, you know, that whole movie with Steve Jobs, right? And how he's kind of closed-minded a little bit. But you know there's people around there that think and create ideas. And so in ministry, it's the same way. I keep telling, and the staff's doing a great job of this, so are our leaders, is that all issues are on the table. We don't want to come to a table and this is the only way we should do this. No, let's bring your ideas, and let's bring your convictions about ministry, and let's talk about ideas. So a great way to accommodate somebody is to pay attention to their ideas and to let them know, wow, that's really interesting, or that's a great idea. I had no idea that we could do it like that. There's several things that I have planned here at the church, and I didn't have the best idea. I had some ideas, but they weren't the best idea. And so we've got to make room for other people's ideas and go about it a different way. We saw that at the board meeting just this last Thursday. So that's a big one. And then number 3, and this is a really big one, there's strengths. I think we put the word strengths in there, right? Also put a slash here, strengths and also personalities. If you want to learn to be more accommodating, make room for each other's strengths and their personalities. If somebody's really strong in a certain area, don't be jealous. Guard against that. Guard against being jealous of somebody else. If they're really good at a certain gift or a certain talent, don't get jealous. Praise them for that. Rejoice with them. And then also personality. If somebody has a different personality, why did I say if somebody has a personality? Everybody has different personalities. But if somebody has a different personality in your group or in your ministry or on your team, make room for that personality. That's God creating the diversity of people. Everybody has different personalities. There's 4 different types of people with personalities. It's kind of fun here. One is a task-oriented individual. The other person is a fun individual. Then another personality, the third one is a thinker. And then the other one is a peacemaker. If you want to write this down, you can, but you don't have to. If you think about personalities, one is a task-oriented individual, right? How many of you know somebody who is a task-oriented individual? Yeah, you're sitting right next to them, right? Let's say, for instance, let's say we're going to go to Mexico. The task-oriented individual is going to say, well, what time are we leaving? What day? When are we going to return? What are we going to do when we get there? What is the route that we're going to take when we get there? When we're there, who are we going to talk to? What are we going to allow? Where are we going to stay? What car are we going to drive? And what time are we going to go to bed? Task-oriented people. The fun personality would be like, woo, we're going to Mexico. Let's go to Cabo. Let's go to San Lucas. Let's go over here. Let's try those street tacos that we heard about. All those kids that are asking for chiclets, let's give them like tons and tons of chiclets. And they just want to have fun. They just want to go and enjoy the beaches and enjoy all the things that Mexico has to offer. It's just going to be just a gigantic ball of fun. Who cares when we're going to leave? Who cares when we get back? Let's stay an extra day, right? Who cares what we drive? We don't need to drive. Let's ride a bike. That's the fun individual, right? How about the thinker? The thinker, the person who wants to go to vigil. Is this wise to go to Mexico right now at this time of the year? Is this wise? Should we do this? Should we really stay in Tijuana? Should we really stay down in Cancun? What if they have a hurricane down there? And they think about it. They think about that trip to Mexico. You got task-oriented, then you got the fun person, then you got the thinker, and then the 4th type of personality, which is so true. It's the peacemaker. we should not be going to Mexico right now. We should stay in our country, let them be in their country, and all is good. If you get stopped by the police, just give them whatever you want. Just go ahead. Let's just make peace. Peacemaker. Same thing is true in ministry. In ministry, in the same way, small groups, whether you serve on a team, it doesn't matter what team you serve here at Claremont, you're going to have a task-oriented individual. Let's get this done. Point A, point B, let's move on, let's get out, let's go home, right? Then you have the thinker. You want to think through all angles of it. Then you have the fun person who's just happy to be here at church because they had a bad day, and it's so good to see you tonight, right? And all of that. And then you have the peacemaker. We just need to stop and just pray right now. Just need to pray before we decide what color the paint should be on the wall. Let's pray. Right? Isn't that true? It's true. It's very true. But we need to make room for each other's personalities and their strengths and know that God created them. And then here's a big one. Number 4 is make room for each other's faults. Oh, we've got to be able, if you want to be a good team member, make room for other people to drop the ball. It's not if it's going to happen, it's what? When it's going to happen, right? It's when it's going to happen. So to learn to be accommodating and to accommodate other people on your team, in your small group, or at your business, or in your ministry, or at your job, or even in your home, make room for other people's needs, make room for other people's ideas, make room for other people's strengths and their personalities, because chances are they're not all like you. If everybody was like me, it would be a mess around here. We got to have other individuals and personalities here as well, and then make room for each other's faults, and that's a big one as well. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 2, it says, be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love that you have for them. People are going to mess up. People are going to let you down. You just got the easier and the sooner that you can learn that and accept that, the better team player you will be. It's just a fact of life. Your kids are going to let you down. Parents let kids down. Right? It's just going to happen. We got to make room for each other's faults. And then finally, what stands for M, to be a great team player, is to have the same mission. What we are here for. Philippians 2, verse 2 says, be of same mind, maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose. Hebrews 10, verse 25 says, let us not give up the habit of meeting together, but let us encourage one another. And then Philippians 1 verse 27 says, live in a way that brings honor to the good news of Christ, standing strong with one purpose, working together as one for the faith of the good news. It's really clear what we're called to do during the 40 days of community, and it's really clear what we're called to do as a church. We're called to love one another here in the church, and we're called to reach out and love people in our community. It's really clear what we're called to do here at Claremont Church of God because we believe that it's found in the Bible, and it is to win and to build and to send. We are called to reach out and to win people for Jesus Christ. And then we're called to build them up in the faith, not let them hang and starve spiritually. We're called to build them up and give them foundational tools so that they can walk in the faith by themselves. And then we're called to send them out to repeat the whole process again, to send them out to do ministry, to win and to build and to send. We are called to make disciples who make disciples. If all I do as a pastor is make disciples, but don't teach you how to make other disciples, then I'm failing. Because I'm teaching you how to be a disciple, but if you don't teach other people how to be a disciple, then it stops right there. That's not how the gospel is preached. If you look at Jesus, he was teaching his disciples how to make disciples, if you think about that. He was teaching the people that were walking with him how to continue the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's what we're called to do here at Claremont. We're called to win and to build and to send. And in your businesses or in your jobs, and this is, again, back to In-N-Out. This is why In-N-Out is so effective. It is super crystal clear what we're called to do and who's called to do it and how it works. In the same way, though, the church, even though we have different personalities, we have different gifts, we have different convictions of what should be, what could be here at the church, we're called to do one thing, make disciples who make disciples. And we're calling that win, build, and send. And that's what we're doing here at Claremont. And we invite all of us to be a part of that process. In fact, it's incomplete if all of us are not part of that process. And so that will help you. Those tools right there will help you become a better team member and serve alongside somebody else even more. Now, what's interesting is, notice I didn't say that will help the other person sitting next to you be a better team player. I didn't say that. I didn't preach that entire devotion right there and message and say, this will help all those other people be better team players. No, this is going to help what? You, me, right? Me, to be a better team player on the team. And as we serve one another here in the church, I think this is critical. So let's end with a song. I want to invite the worship team back up in the choir. We're going to sing the new Hallelujah.